Good afternoon, Blue Water Ladies. Welcome to the end of September. If you're like me, you're very much in disbelief that it is the end of September. And my hope and my prayer for you is that whatever is your life situation, whether that's your kids went to school or you started back at your job or whatever that looks like, that the fall has been going well for you. And as it is the end of the month, it is the start of our roots season. And like I said in my last video, this is the form in which we are going to do it this year. And my hope and prayer is that you still will be blessed and encouraged with the material that is supplied for you. And before I kind of go into what is the lesson for this month, I just wanted to kind of share a funny story which I think kind of relates to the study that I'm going to highlight. So I don't know how it works in your family with grocery shopping. I used to grocery shop, and that was kind of like my sanity time. I know that sounds bad, but it was kind of like my time just for me to be away, out of the house and everything. But in probably the last, I would say, year or so, Jonathan has taken that over, which it was a good change for me as well. And so before he goes grocery shopping every week, he asks the boys if there's anything that they would like to have. And this particular grocery shop, I don't know which boy asked for it, but they asked for watermelon. So Daddy comes home with a watermelon. What I usually do is the next day I will chop anything up that, we're going to be kind of working at over that week. But I didn't get to the watermelon right away. And so the one afternoon after for a snack, Miles came to me and asked if I could cut up the watermelon. And of course, right, I was like, yep, I was planning on doing that and putting it in the fridge and whatnot. But so picked up the watermelon, and I have not ever had this happen. I picked up the watermelon, and I kid you not, the top of it, this is just with 2 days of being home from the grocery store, splits open, and like the guts of this watermelon just spews out at me onto my sweater, and it smelled so bad. Like I couldn't even believe it. So I tried to quickly yet gently put this watermelon down because it's just oozing everywhere. And then I have to figure out how I'm going to dispose of this rotten, disgusting watermelon. And Miles was quite upset and thought that I was just denying him watermelon. So I had to show him that, no, this watermelon's disgusting. So I took him out to the compost and we threw the watermelon, well, not threw it, but kind of plopped it into the compost. And sure enough, it just completely exploded even more. And he was like, oh, okay, I get it. That's why you didn't want me having this watermelon, because it's disgusting. And why do I tell you this story? I tell you this story because I feel like in many ways, that's how we can approach relationships. And I think not all of you, some of you are great for this, but speaking for me, I can allow things that I tell myself are not big deals. It's not a hill I want to die on. But then I don't let go of those issues. And so in my marriage in particular, so then those things will fester, whether that be, he didn't notice that something needed to be put away or the garbage needed to be taken out or whatever. And I didn't ask him to do those things, but I had that expectation that he would do it. And that wasn't communicated. So I kind of felt like that's how it can go with the watermelon, like it's fine. The watermelon, it's good. It's good and it's growing and whatever. But then at some point it turns, and then what happens? It erupts with all the ugly, stinky disgustingness. So with that being said, the podcast or interview that I watched this month on the Focus on the Family YouTube was from a year ago. They interviewed Gary Thomas, and he wrote a book called Loving Him Well, and it's a male's perspective for women on how to love their husbands, which I thought was really great because we function differently. Let's be realistic here. How you deal with situations and how your husband deals with situations is very different. for the most part. And so I found it very encouraging from a man to hear about how men work. So it's a 2-part series. I will link it for you there. I strongly encourage you to take a listen, to make notes. Yeah, it was so good. And there's I'm going to highlight a few things that I took from it. The first thing was that he obviously, he said that men and women are different. And so for women, what we can do to have influence for our husbands are a few different things. The first thing is that he said we as women cannot have influence on our husbands if we ourselves are not influenced and affirmed by the love of our God. So if we are not being filled and affirmed by the Lord as to who we are as his daughters, then we can't affirm and influence our husbands properly, because we ourselves are not receiving on that end as well. Another thing that really challenged me is that he said the only thing you can change in your marriage is yourself. And I kind of cringed a bit, because as much as I know that to be the case, I think subconsciously and probably even consciously sometimes, I think if he would only do it this way, if he would only see that I need blank, whatever that blank might be, then things would go better, things would run smoother, etc. But I can't do that, right? Like, I have to better myself in my relationship with the Lord, in other areas, in order to better my husband, to have influence on my husband. And then two other things is that out of that bettering of yourself, then you can deal with the situations that arise better. So whether your husband struggles with fill in the blank, you can anticipate those situations and better help him deal with them, or know when to approach him about certain things, and just overall understand and know your husband better. And yeah, honestly, I strongly encourage you to go and give a listen. The last thing that and I have an asterisk beside this, because as much as I know it, I don't usually think of it this way, is that male and female brains obviously are different. And for us, when our husbands communicate to us that their frustration or their pain, that actually is really hard for them. That's painful for them to do that. Whereas for us, that kind of comes as that's very natural for us to express, right? And we want empathy from them. But how they respond to us is with a fix-it attitude. But that is how they're showing empathy, is by wanting to fix it so that you don't have to experience those situations again, which I did not think of it that way. And I definitely have had that conversation with Jonathan, be like, I don't want you to say anything. I don't want you to fix it. I don't want your input. I just want you to listen as to how I am feeling about this. But I underplayed or did not ever think about the fact that is them showing empathy. That is them showing concern. And finally, the question that I'm going to encourage you to think about and to have the courage to even ask your spouse is, what do you want me to do for you that I'm not doing? And the reason why I'm saying courage in particular is because I think so often I'll speak for myself. So often I take note of all the ways that I serve my family, all the ways I love my family, and all the ways that I think that it's very me focused in that sense, and that I am showing them how I love them. But if they're not feeling that, or right, they see it, they're feeling it and they're living it from their perspective. So what do you want me to do for you that I'm not doing. And he gives an example of a woman in the podcast who asked that of her husband and what his response was. So very, very good podcast, or not podcast, video interview. Really great. I highly recommend it. And I would be interested. I would be interested to hear what you guys thought of it as well. And that is September's edition of Roots. I miss you all. I hope you're all doing well. And I will see you next month.